Good morning, everybody. I'm not going to criticize you for that tepid good morning, okay? So, I apologize for my clothing. Before I live in New York, and before I left New York, I had a little like a fashion show with my wife, and I would put on like a hoodie or something, and her responses would be everything from no to God no. And so she said, "Look, if you can't like look hip, you're just not aging well. Then at least look experienced." So this is me now looking experienced. I wanted to, in my business, I think about dreams a lot, and I had a dream last night that I wanted to share with you. That's relevant. Has anyone here ever had a flying dream? A lot of you, wow, they're awesome, aren't they? So we have a blog where we do sleep. We report on sleep research, and one of the ways, if you've ever wanted to have a flying dream, is in your dream, you look for incongruities. So you might look at a clock and it says 2 p.m. You look away, you look back and it says 4 p.m. And you think, there's a glitch in the matrix. Something's happening here. And so you keep looking for those incongruities. In my dream last night, I had a chance to look for some incongruity. So in my dream, I was about to speak to you. I come bounding up the stage. I'm very, very confident. You're in rows, though. You're not at tables here. You're in rows, and there's a lot of you here, right? And so as I bound up on the stage, I looked at the screen is behind me in my dream, and it's not my slides. First incongruity. And I say, Mark, I think there's a problem. I don't get a response. I say, Mark, are you sure these are my slides? And from the back of the room, I hear, my name is Mike. And that was not an incongruity because Mike is the guy who mic'd me up. And that's how I remembered his name. I thought, okay, Mike. So I look back at the slides and I try to advance them with the clicker. And they're just not my slides. And so I turn around to the audience, and now sitting bigger than life is Sister James Miriam, my 5th grade teacher. And she's got the black on with the big white thing. And I have 2 sisters who are nuns. I still can't remember what you call that white thing. And she says, McCambley, she never called me Joe or Joseph, like, McCambley, why are you such a F up? But she doesn't say F, right? She just lets it out. And I thought to myself in that moment, why are you such an F up? Like, I just started to sink in this dream. So I turn around and look at the screen again, and there's a pornographic image. I'm not making this up. There's a pornographic image, and I'm not going to say that I've never looked at porn in my life, but that's definitely, it's an incongruity, right? And I turn around, I look at the audience, and sitting over here is my mother, who is dead. And I look at her, and I don't think, oh, this must be a dream because mom's dead. I think, mom lives in Philadelphia, and she doesn't like to fly. I don't think she would be here. And that told me that maybe this is a dream. And I look back at the slides, and I said, please tell me this is a dream. And so I walked to the end of the stage. And if you ever had a sleep dream where you think you're dreaming, you don't go to like the tallest building and jump off to see if you're dreaming. You do a little jump, right? And if you float, you keep trying to float a little higher. And I've been doing this for a couple of years now, and I've gotten to the point where maybe I could get up to about here and float. So I go to the end of the stage, and I'm not going to like jump on Sister James Miriam, who strangely is not there anymore. There's a priest. I just kind of do one of these, and I let myself fall forward on the stage, and I don't fly. I just wake up. I wake up, and you know that sense of relief you get that, okay, there was no porn, there was nothing bad, I'm going to be okay. But I still felt like a F up. Did you ever awake from a bad dream where you just can't get rid of that depression that it puts you into? So that's kind of the place I'm at right now, honestly. I know, I'm sorry this is so involved, but I want to ask you to do something that no speaker of it has ever asked you to do. You know, from 5th grade math, Sister James Miriam taught me that 2 negatives equal a positive. So I want to create a negative experience that will turn this all into a positive. So if everybody could stand up for me, please. Please stand up, okay? I'm going to count to 3. And when I say 3, I want you to boo mercilessly. Just boo me off the stage. And if when I touch my ear, let it die down. And then I need someone who really believes they have the loudest voice in the room. Anybody? Anybody out there? 100%. All right. John, you've been on stage. In the back, in the left. As when everything dies down, at the first moment of quiet, I would love you to yell, "You suck!" Can you do it? All right, because I want the mics to pick it up. All right. So on the count of 3, boo. I'll let it go for about 5 or 6 seconds. Touch my ear, let it die down. You suck. Okay? All right. 1, 2, 3. That's a thanks I get. Thank you. Now, if we edit this video properly, there's going to be an audience that's watching this video, and they're going to wonder, like, what the hell did he just say? It's going to be awesome, trust me. All right. Thank you for that. I do feel better, I have to admit. All right. So I think we've established Saatva is a mattress company. I may have 3 minutes left to talk, so I'm going to go really fast. So a little bit of background. We were founded in 2010. We were one of the first brands to sell mattresses direct to consumer online. And because of that, oftentimes in your life cycle, in the early days, you're looking for like, what's that one channel that we can monetize and just keep leaning into it? And for us, it was non-branded paid search. We didn't do branded search because nobody knew about Saatva. So we leaned hard into non-branded paid search. And by about 2017, we had reached 168 million in sales. It was really unfettered growth because brands like Tempur-Pedic, Sleep Number, even Mattress Firm at the time, they weren't paying attention to search because people, the only way they knew to buy mattresses was to go into a store. But everybody searched before they went into a store. So we had access to an audience that, kind of usually younger and more progressive that would actually buy online, and we really grew quickly. Between 2015 and the end of 2017, literally 250 mattress brands joined the market. And they made a different product from ours. You probably heard of them: Casper, Purple, Lisa, Nectar, Tuft & Needle. And they made a memory foam mattress kind of based like on a Tempur-Pedic memory foam, and they would fold it, they would compress it, fold it, put it into a box, and they would FedEx it to you or mail it to you. It was a really convenient model for people. But even though they made a very different product, they still called it a mattress. So in 2017, in our only channel, our average cost per click, not 2017, like between 14 and 17, our cost per click went from about $2.83 to sometimes in the high 20s, low 30s during tentpole holiday periods. We lost money in 2017. I joined the company in 2017. And at the end of that year, after we had lost money for the first time in company history, the CFO showed a chart showing revenue and year-over-year sales peaking in February and then plummeting, like I plummeted off the stage in my dream. And at the peak, he had a note that says, "Joe McCambley joined Saatva." And people laughed at that. The board of directors, everybody laughed. But you could tell they were all thinking, yeah, that's right. That's the moment he joined the company. So we knew we had a problem, a search problem, and we had to move into other channels. So the first channel we chose, we didn't want to stray too far away from search. So we entered the affiliate business. And for us, the affiliates are brands, media companies like the Wirecutter, for instance. You do a search for best mattress, you see a paid search ad from the Wirecutter, you click on it and you go there, and Saatva is mentioned. And we were surprised because we were always reluctant to go into the affiliate business because we didn't want to pay the commissions. But what we found was that even though we paid the commission, the social proof that was lent to us by that media company made people more likely to come to our site and much more likely to convert. It was actually a more profitable business for us than than non-branded search had been. The other nice advantage for us from an affiliate standpoint is that you don't pay the affiliate commission until after the sale. So unlike paid search where you're paying up front and hoping for the best, in the affiliate business, you're really only paying once you get the sale. So, and you can build profitability into your model so that it's a hedge against search costs. So we did that. And right after we did that, this was approaching like 2020, we had our feet under us. We were doing a pretty good job with affiliates. COVID hit. So COVID hits, nobody's going into Tempur-Pedic stores. Nobody's going into Sleep Number stores. Nobody's going into Mattress Firm and Sleepy's. Everybody has to go online if they want to buy a mattress. And everybody's into self-care, right? So our volume, just our market share, our sales volume just went through the roof because even then, Tempur-Pedic, Sleep Number, Mattress Firm, they hadn't really perfected their e-commerce space. And we had been in it for 7 or 8 or 9 years and we were humming. So business went really well. After COVID, people stopped searching for mattresses. And we were very exposed then and our sales just plummeted again. And we realized then that we were way too dependent on performance marketing because performance marketing, your revenue goes up, you look like a hero when people are searching. When people stop searching, you're a goat. So we knew we had to go into some other channels, and we chose to move into the upper funnel. So this presentation, I'm finally telling you what I'm going to talk about, is the journey that we took from 2021, 22 to today, moving up the funnel that reestablished our growth. We ran into some problems last year, and I'll talk about how we tried to solve them with YouTube. Today, we have 23 retail stores. They're all doing very, very well. What we've learned is since COVID, the mattress industry has continued to decline to this day. E-commerce is, for us, it's holding steady. For most of the industry, it's going down. And by opening retail stores, we kind of opened ourselves to an audience that we didn't have access to previously, people that would only buy in a retail store. And I remember when our CEO, COVID was still happening, he said, I think we should open retail stores, just saying, duh, are you crazy? That's just the dumbest thing possible. And then since then, every time I come to an idea with him well, I'll get to this later. No, he insults me with that. So as we decided we wanted to move up the funnel, we were working with a research organization out of the UK named WARC, W-A-R-C. It's I think it stands for the World Advertising Research Council. And they do a lot of research since the mid-'80s into different strategies and tactics that different brands follow, and they track the results over the years. And we went to them, we said, what we're looking for is a curriculum that we can put our leadership team through that will help them understand how performance-only brands have moved up the funnel in the past and found success, and what are the things they did, and why did they do what they did, and what were the metrics that they were looking at. And it was important to do that because for any of you that work in performance marketing, especially if you're at a brand that only has done performance in the past, there's a huge reluctance to stray away from what made you what you are today. So any dollar that you're trying to pull from performance, you're going to get a lot of pushback on that. So in order to kind of reduce the pushback, not eliminate it, we wanted to do this curriculum for the leadership team and our board. We also, I wanted to explain this a little bit. So excess share of voice is the beginning of this equation. What that means is we have a share of voice in the market that's greater than our market share. At the time that we did this, our market share was about 1%. So achieving a 2 share of voice wasn't going to be that difficult for us. And it gave me hope because I didn't have to spend more. I didn't have to have a greater share of voice than Tempur-Pedic or Sleep Number. They spend $2 billion a year between the two of them. I just had to spend more than my market share, and I knew that I could do that. The second part of the equation, share of search, SOS, is we all talk about upper funnel tactics as long-term. You spend on TV, takes a little bit of time, and then maybe 90 days or 120 days, you start to see lift in your brand, brand metrics, your brand health metrics. We believe that, and what WARC helped us understand was that we would see an increase in share of search before we saw an increase in market share. So rather than investing for 2 months in the upper funnel and having the board say, look, you're failing, it's not working, we had the ability to say, no, wait, Search is up. That means something good probably is going to happen. Hang in there with us. Then SOM is share of market. So knowing that share of voice greater than our market share is so important, we decided we're going to start with podcasting and radio, and we're just going to dip our toes into the water, see what happens, and then if that works, we're going to move into other channels. But although podcasting is a little bit expensive at times, our goal was to get the greatest number of impressions at the lowest possible cost, the lowest CPMs we could possibly get, so that we could maximize our impressions. Skip that. So we dipped our toes in podcasting, and on this chart, you'll see that that light brown line that's moving downward is our interpretation of market demand. We're looking at search volume for mattress-related terms, and that's been on the decline since COVID ended. But that dark line is our revenue. So, and you see that spike in revenue right after we invested in podcasting. Looked like things were going to work. I'll tell you, within 2 weeks of starting to run on podcast and radio, we were like in Tom Segura, Malcolm Gladwell. We did some. He's a radio host in New York, and he's really popular, and everybody loves him. Howard Stern. Within 2 weeks, we saw our search volume start to go up. And this is what it looked like in our analysis. So on the bottom of this chart, you see our impression volume. We really did. We're doing maybe at the end of this around 200,000 a month in podcasting. Not a big investment, but look what happened to our search volume and our revenue in a very short period of time. They just started to move up. So based on that, we invested in linear TV, and we started with linear because we could get between 240 and 280 cent CPMs. So as we started to spend more in TV, we were just trying to heavy up on impressions. We weren't really trying to be methodical about who we're reaching and why. We picked shows that we thought would work well, but we weren't doing audience segmentation and stuff like that. And then after we got about 3 iterations of our MMM back, that started to tell us that streaming TV, there's something there that although it would cost us, maybe $30 CPMs, with the small investment we had made in streaming TV, it looked like that we could get a better return if we invested more in streaming. And also the data seemed to imply that diminishing returns on streaming was farther away for us than maybe it was on linear. So we went into streaming TV as well. I'll tell you, knowing that equation, that we were looking for excess share voice, we wanted to be heavy on impressions, I had always been reluctant to invest in streaming because it was so expensive. I just thought, we're doing well with linear, the business is growing. When the MMM proved me wrong and my team kind of rebelled a little bit, we made that investment and I was proven wrong. To which my CEO says, well, duh. As we invested in TV, we saw that, again, that search volume, the more we invested in TV, you see as we went heavy on the TV impressions, search volume just skyrocketed it for us, and so did market share. So we were learning and we were teaching the organization that the more impressions we put into market, the more people search for us, and then the more people would buy from us. And we actually, after about 9 quarters, we started to see a statistically significant relationship between the number of impressions we put in the market and the number of people who would search for us, and then searches to market share. And we attached what we refer to as an R-squared value to that. So R-squared value, just really simply, you all probably know this better than I do, but the way to interpret this is 51% of our search volume, for branded search I'm talking about now, so people searching for Saatva mattress as opposed to just mattress, 51% of that search volume could be explained by our TV impressions. And again, this isolates TV. It's not even radio or podcasting. 51%. That meant 49% of the reason why people were searching for us was due to other causes, but 51%, that TV volume, was huge for us. Even more importantly, 63% of our movement in market share could be explained by movements in search volume. So based on that, we just thought, wow, our business has become predictable, right? So going into the Cyber 5 holiday, the Thanksgiving period of last year, when our finance team came to us and then we said, here's your revenue target for the month of, or for the fourth quarter and for the month of November in Cyber 5, we said, babies, we can beat that. We'll show you. We're gonna do this. So we gave them a higher number. And because of that, we spent more on TV impressions than we ever had at any point in the company's history. In November, we went really heavy on TV impressions. And you can see that we work with a media company named Tatari. You can see that search volume on our site and visit volume kind of moved with the impression volume. We built the best momentum going into Cyber 5. So the lower line there, the orange one, is our gains in year-over-year revenue going into the Labor Day holiday. We thought that was extraordinary. November, for the first 2 or 3 weeks especially, was even better than we saw on Labor Day. We were just humming. We were confident. We were doing end zone dances before the game was over. So we found that traffic, branded search was up 59% year over year from last November to this past November, and up 50% for the month of November. November is probably the biggest sales month for us ever, during the course of the year. So for search volume to be up 50% for that, and that's such an important month, was huge for us. Black Friday became the second highest revenue day in company history. And still, we fell short of that boast by 10%. And we ended the month of November where everyone was kind of saying, great job. I've never been more disappointed in you. So kind of like my dream and Sister James Miriam. So we thought, okay, maybe our equations broke down. We had seen such consistency in the causation between impressions and search and market share. So we double checked and we saw that those relationships had actually gotten stronger. The R-squared values between impression and search grew stronger, and the R-squared values between searches and market share grew. We knew we had taken an extraordinary amount of market share out of the market. We had done well, right? But the revenue wasn't there. So that must have meant if the relationship between impressions was so strong, even stronger, then there must have been a problem with impressions. And there was. We examined the data and we saw that really in the last 10 to 14 days of November, CPMs went off the charts for us. Linear CPMs went off these are just linear CPMs. They went off the charts. We had intended to put almost 1.2 billion impressions in market in November. We fell short by about 200 million impressions. And that's what caused us to have a shortfall in revenue. So we learned then that, okay, all those metrics that make your business so predictable can be fantastic, but if for some reason the market shrinks and those visits and those impressions and a point of market share is less valuable than you thought it was, or if you fall short in impressions, you've got to be careful about that. You really have to be mindful of the number of impressions you're putting in market. And I know as I say that, you're probably thinking, of course, everybody knows that, Joe, you idiot. And I do feel like an idiot over that. But remember, we were doing the end zone dance, and we took our eye off the ball. So we started to wonder if the reason that we fell short in impressions in November was because post-election, more advertisers came back in market. They were more confident. So that made the impression cost go up. But we also historically had invested mostly in remnant inventory, and that inventory dried up for us in the last 2 weeks of the year. So even if we wanted to pay the higher CPMs, we probably wouldn't be able to get it with the methodologies that we were following. So we thought, okay, we've got to learn from this mistake. If linear and streaming isn't always going to be as powerful for us as we hoped, let's look at YouTube. And we had never really spent that much money on YouTube. So there were some pros and cons of using YouTube for us, and I won't go into these. I think you all know them, again, probably better than I do. Our reluctance has always been that last bullet on the right. Like, we don't always know what we're buying. We're kind of trusting an algorithm to put our advertising in front of audiences. In the past, we found like 20% to 25% of our volume went to children's sites because it's probably parents taking their phone and throwing it in the back seat of the car to keep the kids quiet. So, we knew that we had to cleanse a little bit and get the kids' content out and maybe some offensive content out, but we didn't feel that going into it that we would have much control. But I'm of the opinion, like a lot of people, it's like, how could YouTube not work? It's so big, it's growing so quickly. I use it all the time. It's got to work on some level. So let's suspend disbelief, or let's suspend our lack of trust, and let's just go into this. So we decided to invest almost $900,000. That's a 10x what we had ever invested before. We were trying to find out if YouTube could be a replacement, especially for streaming TV. We felt that there was an overlap in audiences because YouTube is a streaming channel oftentimes. So we wanted to do in YouTube what we were doing in streaming TV, nationwide reach, relatively untargeted. We removed that kids content, and then we did a geographic holdout so that we could compare results and see if there was any kind of incrementality. We don't have all the results back yet, so it's really not too fair for me to talk about this yet, but I think the early indications are solid enough that we could say it probably didn't work for us. On the good news side, our cost per visit turned out to be $8.32, and that's comparable to what we've been seeing on TV. So that was very encouraging news for us. The click-through rate was 1% of what we were seeing on average on TV, honestly. We also saw that from an incrementality standpoint, it was well under 1% incremental. And like I said, we're still waiting for some information back from the holdout study. We don't have all that information back just yet. We're trying to give it 90 days after the fact because we know that there's a 90-day window, but it's not looking good for us, for YouTube to be a replacement. Some of the learning that we had out of that, or a hypothesis that we're trying to figure out right now, is maybe we were so well, if not saturated, but heavy in a streaming TV market that it was hard for YouTube to prove incrementality because it's just maybe there was so much audience overlap that it's too hard to attribute the success we might have had to YouTube as opposed to any other channel. We did get the low-cost impressions that we wanted, so that gives us hope. We do think that there's a path that we can follow there. We think that maybe TV viewers are more likely to persist in their sessions and more likely to visit the site. So if you're watching TV, you probably have a mobile phone in your home. You can do a search for Saatva and look it up, and you're not interrupting your program. Whereas on YouTube, you're going to have to interrupt your programming if you're on your mobile phone and you want to visit Saatva. And you're also distracted. You're getting alerts, reminders, updates, and things like that. So it's not as clean and attention grabbing for us, I think, as TV might be. And then we find that we sell more over a big screen than we do over a small screen. So a large percentage of our traffic comes to the site over mobile. A very small volume of revenue comes in over mobile. It's mostly large screens. So that may enter into it. I'm not exactly sure how, but it probably did. For our next steps, I think the mistake we made was thinking of YouTube as upper funnel only. It's probably not our answer in the upper funnel. We're definitely going to make use of it. We're going to figure that out because the CPMs are good. But I also think that the vast majority of people who come to our site don't buy from us. And when you're in that consideration stage and you're bouncing between mattress brands and affiliate sites and things like that, you're looking for help. And I think that we could probably use YouTube to kind of put more factually oriented videos in front of consumers when they're becoming more rational in their thinking. Upper funnel is very emotional. I think mid funnel, as you're getting more rational, you're looking for whys and wherefores that you should go with Saatva. I think we're going to build more purposeful targeting, especially I made a similar presentation the other day, and so many people came to me and said, you can treat YouTube like you do stream. You can pick the shows that you want to sponsor. You can pick the audiences or at least assume certain audience with different programming. So you can figure that out. Don't just believe that you have to trust the algorithm. So we're going to do that. So like I said, we're going to test YouTube on bigger shows. We're also, especially last week, I learned that there's a lot of YouTube content that is juxtaposed against podcasts. As you saw earlier, podcast does well for us. So we think that combining podcasts that use YouTube could be a big benefit for us. So we have a lot to go. We haven't closed the door on YouTube because, like I said, we all fundamentally believe It's got to be good for us. We just have to do it smarter than we did and make it work better. Thank you. That's it. You're a great audience. Thanks for the used stuff.
All right. Thank you, Joe. Cool. So we would love to take some questions from the crowd. Quick rule on questions. Please give your name and the company that you're with before you ask your question. But who's got some questions for Joe? Oh, thank you, John.
Do not say he sucks.
Hi, Joe. I'm Maria from Linkia.
Hi, Maria.
Firstly, that's got to be the best opening of a presenter that I've ever experienced in my life. I'll remember you forever.
Thank you.
Secondly, can you talk a little bit about the content? What mix do you have of like agency produced content? You're on YouTube. Are you using like creators like UGC?
Yes,
Yeah.
I can. So I grew up as a writer, a copywriter, and a creative director in my career before I joined Saatva. So I'd like to believe that I'm God's gift to creativity. So we have our own internal creative team. We have a house in Los Angeles with 7 bedrooms and 2 kitchens where we do all of our filming internally. So whether it's TV or YouTube or social media, all of that is done in-house. All of our 3D modeling is done, and the rendering is done out of that house. So it's all kind of internal. We for the YouTube test, because we wanted to be a like test, we ran our most successful TV ads on YouTube. So we work with Atari, and they can tell us, within 30 seconds of a spot running on this show, this is how much traffic we're seeing to your site. It's not a perfect metric, but it's directionally, it really works well for us. So we took the TV creative and put it on YouTube, and I think that was a mistake for us. That it's not TV, although we'd like to think it is TV. So I think moving forward, and I apologize, I didn't put it in a bullet. We'll do different creative that's handmade for YouTube and the audience, probably lower funnel types of content. Did I answer your question? Okay, good. Thank you.
All right.
No, you don't get to ask a question. No,
Yes.
no.
You got to do it. You got to do it. How's it doing? Kevin Washington at Best Buy.
Kevin, nice to meet you.
Good to meet you too, man. The question I had, well, one, I would be interested in, even if you did that same YouTube test, but then gated it only to large screen formats. I know it's something that we've done in the past and seen, just depending on like, hey, if you think these TVs are going to work better, that's an interesting gating approach for the experiment. But second question was, I saw that you guys are using the R squared approach to kind of saying, hey, how's the model doing better? Is that primarily because it was podcast and you couldn't really do an A/B test to get to like a randomized control to like really get to more of that causal relationship instead of the correlation?
Kevin, actually, the R squared model for us breaks down in podcasting and radio. We don't see the same relationship. We don't see the same relationship between most impressions and those R squared values. It's really strictly TV. That it breaks down over short periods. It breaks down over small channels. So because our investment in TV is orders of magnitude greater than everything else, it works out. But that's a big effort for us that's underway right now. Like we can't be as reliant on TV as we were on performance. We have to figure out what's the contribution of those other channels. We know that podcasting is huge for us. We just can't prove it with the data right now. And I think you just took a passive aggressive way of selling more TVs when you said maybe yes.
All right. Any final questions for Joe?
Thank you, everybody. Enjoy.
All right. Thank you.